The best thing about crypto winter is that we can all just keep on living our normal lives while the Cardano projects, the good Cardano projects, just keep on building quietly in the background. If you feel like the guy in the thumbnail chose the worst possible attire for whatever type of building he's doing, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Before we get to all the quiet building going on in Cardano, you know who hasn't been quietly building over the last couple of years? I think I've figured something out about the US vice president. I think at some point early on in her vice presidency, she figured out that her job was perfect for quiet quitting. I mean, she's been accused of word salad before, but she has recently taken it to amazing new heights with this, with space cooperation. Check this out.
In particular, we will discuss the work that we will do together to strengthen our space cooperation. You and I spoke briefly about the beginning of the next era, and for you, what that means in terms of your leadership and your vision for the future. And certainly strengthening our space cooperation would be a part of that agenda, including, of course, using our space cooperation to think about how we strengthen the economic prosperity and development of our nations.
The other dude's looking around like, is she talking about outer space? To be fair, she was supposed to be talking about a strategic partnership between the US and Mongolia that did involve space. But I mean, come on. The woman said space cooperation like 57 times in 41 seconds. I don't think anybody thinks that speech took like 10 hours to write. On to some of this quiet building going on in our Cardano projects. And this is kind of great for all of us in Cardano because just like the good Cardano projects were building a lot during the good days of the last bull cycle, seems like a lot of those same projects are still building now in crypto winter. And some of those projects are our Cardano metaverse projects, like Virtua here. So Virtua has sort of a resource collection thing going on. And you might remember this was something they talked about in the past, and it's still a little unclear to me exactly how well this is going to work out, like what we can actually use those resources for, whether we can, sort of craft things to go on our land. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I'm definitely gathering resources by using my NFTs that are related to Virtua. You can send them on these little quests and they go and gather things for you. And then your land is like automatically generating some resources that hopefully I can use for something later on. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but Virtua also has some actual playable games going on right now. They just announced this Rainbow Arrow game in their Gamers Lounge. I have no idea what this game is or if it's fun, but I like that we've got actual Cardano metaverse projects, and they're doing the gamified things like this resource collection thing that's going on. They've got actual playable games going on. I think these are all steps in the right direction. There's also a lot of activity going on in Cornucopias right now. This post says, testing with very limited community members has started this week. It will fan out of the community from here. Please go sign up on cornucopias.io for testing. So Cornucopias is a very ambitious UE5 virtual world inside Cardano. We can argue, how much of these metaverse projects are on-chain versus off-chain, but this is a very ambitious virtual world inside the Cardano ecosystem. I'm really excited to see what the actual game looks like. I believe there are some videos coming out right now of people already inside the testing, and I'm excited to see what this looks like. Pavia has also been very busy with their Pavia playground, and they've even built a giant X for the rebranding of Twitter. So it looks like they've got some kind of dynamic camera control stuff going on, some screenshots, and some just very pretty images from the Pavia playground coming out. This is another project. I'm excited for all of our major Cardano metaverse projects, but like I keep saying, if just one of them is a fun place to hang out in, I'll be happy. But if we end up with like 3 really good metaverse projects, even better. World Mobile is also moving ahead as always. You might have seen this news last month. World Mobile secured licensed spectrum in the United States, in the Western United States, in the states of California, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah. And I know you're thinking, Vegas, LA, San Francisco, what's the the unconnected problem there? It's not in those areas that they're talking about necessarily. What do these states have in common? California, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah. A lot of rural desertscape. What don't you have in the desert? Connectivity. Sometimes in these rural desert parts of these states, there may be a little bit less connectivity according to World Mobile, and they're going to try to solve that problem. More recently, in fact, just today, World Mobile had this to say. We're excited to announce World Mobile token will be bridged to both the BNB chain and Ethereum blockchains. World Mobile's multi-chain strategy aims to connect a wider audience to its rapidly growing ecosystem. Now, I'm not known to be a big fan of bridging or bridges or multi-chain strategies or BNB or Ethereum, really. But this is evidence. World Mobile is definitely doing things. Another crypto company doing things is Coinbase. Head legal guy over at Coinbase, Paul Graywall, had this to say. For most people, Friday is just the day before the weekend, but after this Friday, the neighborhood will never be the same. And that's because today, Friday, Coinbase will be filing its motion to dismiss the SEC case against it. And the grounds for the motion you're already familiar with if you watch this channel. Basically, Coinbase is saying, hey, you're the SEC, that's the Securities and Exchange Commission, and we don't think these crypto assets are securities. And no one's given you the authority to regulate crypto if it's not a security. And also, you let us go public and you didn't say a word about our whole business being the trading of crypto. If it was a security, you should have said something when you let us go public. So we'll see how this goes. But I think it'd be pretty fantastic for crypto if the court would come around and just dismiss this whole case. That'd be a pretty fantastic result. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, wouldn't it be nice? That would be a very different part of the bad to nice spectrum compared to the result we saw in the recent Kwon case. This is problematic because I think a lot of people in crypto probably agree. Kwon may have done some bad things, and probably U.S. regulators are not out of line for going after him. However, that's problematic because law sometimes gets made in these cases when you have these very unsympathetic characters who are on the receiving end. This post says, today a different Southern District of New York District Court judge emphatically rejected Judge Torres's Howey analysis in the recent Ripple case. So you'll remember that Judge Torres, part of her holding was that the court was going to distinguish between sales to institutional investors and sales to retail, saying that sales to institutional investors could be unregistered securities offerings because the institutional investors would have realized that Ripple was getting their money and that they could have an expectation of profits based on the efforts of Ripple Labs, whereas retail didn't even know who they were buying from in most cases. So this court rejected all that. They said it may also be mentioned that the court declines to draw a distinction between these coins based on their manner of sale, such that coins sold directly to institutional investors are considered securities and those sold through secondary market transactions to retail investors are not. That's what they're rejecting. In doing so, the court rejects the approach recently adopted by another judge of this district in a similar case, SEC versus Ripple. That is the so-called Torres doctrine. Richie Torres kind of coined that term, the Torres doctrine. I love it. And this is the problem. Sometimes if you have a very sympathetic person on the receiving end of an SEC enforcement action, you get laws made that you're going to like if you're in that industry. And if you have a very unsympathetic person on the receiving end of the enforcement action, you might get laws you might not like. And these are two different district courts. They don't have to listen to each other. They have to listen to the circuit courts, and the circuit courts have to listen to the Supreme Court. But these district courts, they don't have to listen to each other. So we're getting a little bit of a split in the Southern District of New York between these district courts. And eventually this will probably have to get resolved, maybe by a circuit court, and beyond that, maybe even by the Supreme Court. Janet Yellen is just straight puzzled that Fitch has downgraded the credit rating of the United States. It's not like the Austrian economists told you this is exactly what happens when you print this much money. Finally, it's only been a couple of days, and already we're seeing headlines like this. Worldcoin says will allow companies, governments to use its ID system. Well, that's certainly different than building global universal basic income. So inside this article, this is a Reuters article, and inside the article, there's someone from Worldcoin saying things like this. I don't think we are going to be the ones generating universal basic income. We kind of already knew that because they said they needed to find like an AI lab to fund the universal basic income, which sounded pretty ambiguous. He says, if we can do the infrastructure that allows for governments or other entities to do so, we would be very happy. Of course, the hard part of UBI is paying for it. So of course you'd be happy to build out infrastructure for UBI as long as somebody else pays for it. That's a very different thing than paying for UBI. I mean, Visa would probably happily take over the infrastructure piece of UBI if somebody else would pay for it. Then he goes on, and this is where it gets a little weird. He says, companies could pay Worldcoin to use its digital identity system. For example, if a coffee shop wants to give everyone one free coffee, then Worldcoin's technology could be used to ensure that people do not claim more than one coffee without the shop needing to gather personal data. Of course, that's sort of like the quaint, Main Street, mom and pop's family-run business version of this, but that's not really what's going to be concerning. It's going to be the use of biometrics of these iris scans for gigantic platforms, possibly, because they're just saying, they're saying companies and governments, and also like they're talking about government use of these ID scans in the context of providing UBI. But what's more likely? Governments use the iris scans to provide UBI, which no one seems to be able to know how to pay for, or is it more likely they use it for something less pleasing to the citizenry? Some kind of dystopian identification of the people. And this is exactly what people were concerned about when this first hit the news. Long ago and also very recently, the thing people were worried about, hey, are you just going to let the government use these iris scans to identify people and create this horrible dystopia? And the answer was always, no, your iris scan is never going to leave the machine. We erase it. And we talked about all the sort of caveats on that. But now what they're saying is, oh, hey, maybe we will partner with companies. Maybe we will partner with governments. This is pretty much exactly what you kind of expect. Anything like this that seems too altruistic, seems too good, seems too much like a free lunch, like, hey, here, have some UBI. That is a free lunch. Anything like that seems too good, it seems like there's always this end result where you, the consumer, are actually the product. The reason why the lunch was free was because you are paying for it by being the product. You being the product is paying for this free UBI lunch. And it's kind of looking like that's going to be the case with Worldcoin too. And this is only after a couple of days. What does this look like after a couple of years? I have a strange feeling that some of the people who gave up their iris scans are going to be wanting them back. We'll see how all that goes. I hope you had a great week. Hope you're getting ready for a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.